weights are where it's at. They have just the right amount of power for a beginner to upgrade from a 300 or 400cc into the realm of big bikes, and just enough power to keep even veteran riders who've been riding bigger bikes all their life properly and thoroughly entertained. And what I have here today, the Triumph Street Triple RS, promises to be one of the best middleweight nakeds in its class. Does it live up to those claims? Well, that's what we're here to find out. Welcome to our road test review of the Triumph Street Triple RS. Subscribe to the Evo India channel for all things thrill of riding, share this video with your friends, and click that bell icon to stay notified on all things thrill of riding. Alright, now let's talk about the design of this bike. It's a very compact bike and you would really mistake it for something smaller considering that it actually displaces 765cc. You have this nice paint scheme with this black and neon accents going on. This is called the Matte Jet Black. This is the more affordable of the two paint schemes available. This costs rupees 11,35,000 ex-showroom. There's another paint scheme called the Silver Ice, which commands around 26,000 rupees more than this, somewhere in that ballpark. Starting from the front, you have these new angrier, meaner, more chiseled, bug-eyed headlamps. But this headlight setup is quite polarizing in the sense that some people like it, some people hate it. I personally love how it looks. It adds a lot of soul and character to the bike. Moving behind, you have these nice tank shrouds, on top of which sits a nice chiseled tank which can hold 17.4 liters of fuel. And these angled cuts really help in allowing you to grip the bike very well. Like your knees, they sit really well, especially for my height, which is around 5 foot 10 inches. Taller people, however, who are around 6'2", 6'3", might find it a little difficult to hold on to the bike properly. Like their knees might come above this. So to really find out if this bike will fit you well, I'd suggest you go to the showroom, sit on it, test ride it. Speaking about the riding position, it's a fair blend between sporty and comfortable. The foot pegs are not completely rear set, but they're rear set enough and high enough to allow enough cornering clearance, and the nice wide handlebar gives you a nice commanding stance over the road. Moving behind, they have the tail section. Now the tail section looks a lot smaller than the front section. Like the whole bike looks front heavy. I like that it looks that way, and I like it more so considering that the rear end is inspired from the Daytona. The Daytona honestly is one of the best looking bikes out there. If you don't feel so, let me know why in the comment section below. So yeah, I really think that tail section looks nice and it has that going for it. Alright, now let's talk about the heart of the matter, that thumping 3-pot engine. So this is the engine that has been derived from the engines that Triumph develops for Moto 2. So you can already imagine the kind of performance that this packs. Now this is a light bike. It weighs in at around 166 kilos dry, and with that you have a full 121.3 bhp to play with and 79 Newton meters of torque to back that. Amongst the three street triples that are available, the S, the R and the RS, this gets the engine in the highest state of tune. Along with that, you also get 5 riding modes instead of 3. You get your standard range, sport and road, and apart from that you also get a rider customizable mode. In the rider customizable mode, you can set your engine map the way you would want based on the other modes. You can set your traction control the way you'd like, you can set your ABS the way you'd like, you can switch your quick shifter on and off, all of that. And then you have the full-blown track mode, which basically cuts down the electronic intervention to a bare minimum. Just what's necessary when you're out on the track. To get those real fast lap times, and get those fast lap times you definitely can, because this motor, it's creamy, it's punchy, it delivers power in a very linear manner. It's not daunting to ride. You can sit on it, get going, and you get a hang of this engine in no time. Entering a corner, exiting a corner, you have power everywhere. Considering that this bike makes its peak power really high up in the rev range at around 11,750 RPM, it doesn't feel like a high-strung peaky motor. You have enough drive at the lower end of the rev band, and it is surprisingly tractable. You can stick it in 6th, leave it at 50, 60, and as long as you have a steady throttle hand, there will be no juddering, no halting, no stalling, nothing. It's just that you won't get to your peak power as quick as you would like, but it's a smooth journey to get there. If I had one complaint is with the ride-by-wire system, is that the on-off throttle transitions are a little jerky. Nothing that a steady throttle hand won't fix, but if Triumph were to fix this by software, it would make the experience all the more enriching. Now you also have traction control, which is different for each rider modes, with it being the most intervening in rain mode and the least intervening in sport or track mode. Now the traction control does come in every now and then when you're having a little too much fun, but it's never too abrupt or it never really robs you of the joy of riding hard. It just comes in quietly, does its job and gets out. So I feel that's calibrated pretty well. Put all that creamy power down, you need a solid chassis setup, and a solid chassis setup this bike has. This here is the RS variant, meaning it gets higher spec components than the R and the S variant. Starting with the suspension setup, you get Showa big piston 41mm upside down forks up front and an Olin STX 40 monoshock at the rear, both of which are fully adjustable for rebound, compression and preload. What this means is you can tailor your riding experience to your liking based on your weight, based on your riding style, and that makes a world of difference on how you ride your bike. We recently did a video with the TVS Apache RR310 BTO, which gets fully adjustable suspension at the front and the rear, and explained the different kinds of adjustments you can make to your suspension setup to get the best out of your ride. And if you apply those same philosophies here, you get a package that is just simply too good to be true. If I were to use one word to explain the handling of this motorcycle, it would be telepathic. It just does exactly what you want it to do. Get it to a set of corners and it will tip in with ease. That perimeter frame, it's just all so taut and comes together so well that you get into a corner with full confidence. You can flick it from left to right with zero effort. And all of this also comes down to the fact that it is wearing Pirelli Diablo Supercorsa SP tires. These tires have some next level amounts of grip. You never feel like you're out of control. Even if you get some random undulations or gravel mid-corner, you just go through it unfazed. You don't change your line, you don't change your throttle input, nothing. Only if it's really serious would you have to add any input from your end. Otherwise, just trust the bike and it'll do what it has to do. And when you need to come to a stop, you have Brembo M50 monoblocks up front. Now you have to remember that these M50 monoblocks were the range-topping consumer market brakes for bikes until a few years back before the Stilemas were introduced. And seeing that this bike has it as a middleweight, it's just heartening to see, and that braking performance shows. You also have a Brembo MCS21 master cylinder up front, which means you can modulate your brake pressure really seamlessly. You have good initial bite and good feedback to follow that up as well. Now when you're riding in the streets, the same hooligan-natured bike that is out on the twisties becomes really calm and composed bike in the street. Now the way it is set up, it works really well. It irons out most of the undulations and bumps and potholes. No stress whatsoever. It's only the really sharper bumps that come through, which can also be dialed out to an extent if you're willing to sacrifice a bit of performance in the corners. Just dial that out the way you would usually. Just go to suspension tech, and I'm pretty sure you can get that ironed out as well. The way it is set up, it gives me a perfect balance for cornering hard and having a fairly present ride in the streets as well. Now in terms of ground clearance, I never really ran into issues where the bottom is scraping, even over taller speed bumps and all that. But it is always better to just exercise caution when you're approaching taller speed breakers. Alright, now let's talk about the features that this bike has on offer. So this is Triumph's flagship middleweight offering, and it does get most of the bells and whistles that you would get in the higher end bikes of their range. You get a full color TFT instrument cluster up front, which works well irrespective of whether you're in harsh sunlight or riding in the dark as well. Whether you want a darker layout or a brighter layout, you can also set it to auto, where it will use a sensor to change based on where you're riding. Then you have 5 riding modes, as I already spoke about. Apart from that, you can also pair your phone to this instrument cluster, which allows you to control your music, your calls, you get notifications, all of that. Apart from that, this also gets the My Triumph Assist and the GoPro connectivity feature, which is a feature bespoke to Triumph, meaning you can control your GoPro right off your instrument cluster. And the best part is this entire interface is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You don't need to break your head figuring out what's what. All of this is controllable through the joystick on your left switch gear. And if you don't like the way your instrument cluster looks, Triumph also allows you to customize with up to 4 different styles and the layout of the instrument cluster. So that's a big plus in my opinion. Apart from that, in terms of safety features, you get the standard ABS traction control, all which modulate themselves based on which rider mode you are on, and you get a bi-directional quick shifter. So overall, using the quick shifter, it's a pretty pleasant experience. It shifts up pretty smoothly and the gearbox is also nice, clicky and tactile. Although the quick shifter doesn't really like being used at lower RPMs, especially when you're using the auto blipper. I found that it missed quite a few shifts and it wasn't always as precise as I would have liked. So I just ended up using the clutch to make faster downshifts. And this obviously does get a slipper clutch, so you don't need to worry about your rear wheel hopping if you're coming down hard on that gearbox. Now apart from that, you have your standard features that you would expect from a bike in this day and age: full LED lighting at the front and the rear, LED indicators and the works. So all in all, it's a pretty well packaged motorcycle. So up until this point, I've been raving about this bike. Does that mean it is perfect? Well, not really. There are two major criticisms I have with this bike. One being its fit and finish and general build quality. For the category and the price of this bike, there are certain loose bits, like the switch gear is a bit loose, there is a rattly noise coming from the front, and just overall the package doesn't feel as well put together as I would have liked it to. And the second one is, well, not so major, but something that does affect the general living experience with this bike. It is its turning radius. So overall the bike is compact, it has a short wheelbase also. That's what helps with its agility as well. But the handlebar lock doesn't turn as much as I would have liked, meaning in a narrow road like I'm standing on right now, I wouldn't be able to make a stationary U-turn in a single pass. I would have to stop, back it up a little, turn it and then continue to make the full U-turn. So that is something that I feel could have been nicer, but it is something I can live with. Alright, so time to conclude and tell you my thoughts on the Triumph Street Triple RS. Should you be spending your money on this bike? Well, at rupees 11.35 lakh ex-showroom for this color scheme, it is a rather pricey motorcycle, but just bear with me for a second. You're getting high-spec components like that suspension setup which you would find on superbikes, Brembo M50 monoblock calipers, which was the staple braking setup for superbikes just up until a year or two back. You're getting Pirelli Diablo Super Corsa SP tires. Again, another high-spec, expensive tire setup. All of which in a package that comes together really well. Now, there are other options. You have inline fours in form of the Kawasaki Z900. You have the Ducati Monster, which is another expensive proposition. And you have bikes like the CB650R, which is another inline four and also costs a lot. But none of them come close compared to this bike in terms of the kit this bike has to offer. And for that, I feel that 2.5 lakh premium over its competition is really justified. And this inline 3 mil, it's a perfect blend of a 2-cylinder and a 4-cylinder. It gives you the power delivery characteristics of both worlds. You really have a solid bike here. Granted, there are some flaws in terms of its build quality and minor niggles like the turning radius, but in the larger scheme of things, I'm willing to oversee that. Should you be willing to oversee that? Well, it all boils down to you. But if you're willing to give some of these exclusive features a miss and you want a similar package, you also have the Triumph Street Triple R to consider. Well, that's it from my end. Thanks for watching this video. Like this video if you liked it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the Evo India channel for all things thrill of riding and thrill of driving.